The year is 1939. Somewhere deep in the frozen forests of Finland, a man lies perfectly still beneath the snow. He has been there for 6 hours. No movement, no sound. His breath, controlled, measured, barely disturbs the air. Around him, the temperature has dropped to -40 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze flesh in minutes, cold enough to make metal burn skin on contact, cold enough to kill. But he does not move, because 500 meters away, through the skeletal trees and drifting snow, Soviet soldiers are advancing. They are searching for him. They have been searching for weeks. Entire battalions deployed with one purpose: find the man they call the White Death and eliminate him. They will not succeed. Not today. Not ever. This is the story of Simo Häyhä, a Finnish farmer who became the deadliest sniper in military history. A man who, in just 100 days of combat, recorded over 500 confirmed kills. A ghost who moved through winter like he was part of it. An invisible hunter who turned the frozen wilderness into his personal killing ground. And this is the story of how one man, armed with nothing but an old rifle, iron sights, and absolute mastery of his environment, terrorized the largest army on Earth. The forest is waiting. The snow is deep. And somewhere in that white silence, death is watching. The invasion. November 30th, 1939. The Soviet Union launches a massive invasion of Finland. The objective is simple: conquer the small Nordic nation quickly, decisively, overwhelmingly. Stalin expects victory within weeks. His generals predict minimal resistance. After all, the numbers tell a clear story. The Soviet Union has a population of nearly 200 million people. Finland has less than 4 million. The Red Army fields millions of soldiers, thousands of tanks, hundreds of aircraft. Finland's military is tiny by comparison, undertrained, under-equipped, outnumbered in every category. On paper, this is not a war. It is an execution. But there is something the Soviet planners have not fully considered. Something that cannot be measured in troop numbers or artillery pieces. The environment. Finland in winter is not just cold, it is hostile to human survival. Temperatures routinely drop below -30 degrees. Snow accumulates in depths measured in meters, not centimeters. Daylight shrinks to a few pale hours. The landscape becomes an endless expanse of white, forests buried, roads erased, landmarks obliterated. For large, mechanized armies accustomed to open terrain and supply lines, this environment is a nightmare. Vehicles freeze. Equipment fails. Soldiers, many from warmer regions of the Soviet Union, suffer frostbite, hypothermia, and disorientation. They advance in massive columns, visible from kilometers away, struggling through snow that swallows them whole. But for small, mobile defenders who know the land intimately, men who have hunted these forests since childhood, who understand cold as a constant companion rather than an enemy, the environment is an advantage. And no one understood that advantage better than Simo Häyhä. The farmer. Before the war, Simo Häyhä was nobody special. Not a career soldier. Not a military prodigy. Just a farmer from the small rural municipality of Rotjärvi in southeastern Finland. He was short, barely over 5 feet tall. Quiet, unremarkable in appearance. The kind of man you would pass on a country road without a second glance. But there were things about him that did not show on the surface. He had been hunting since childhood. Not as sport, as necessity. In rural Finland, hunting meant food, income, survival. It meant spending entire days in the forest, tracking game through snow and silence. It meant understanding animal behavior, how they move, where they hide when they reveal themselves. It meant patience, the ability to remain motionless for hours, waiting for a single moment when everything aligned. It meant marksmanship, not the controlled environment of a shooting range, but real-world accuracy under pressure, in cold, with wind and distance, and a target that would not hold still. By the time war came, Häyhä had been shooting for decades. His rifle, a Finnish M2830, a variant of the Mosin Nagin, was an extension of his body. He knew its weight, its balance, its quirks. He knew exactly where it would place a bullet at 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. He did not need to think about shooting. He simply did it. And when the Soviet Union invaded, that quiet farmer became something else entirely. Iron sights. One of the most remarkable aspects of Häyhä's legend is what he did not use: a telescopic sight. Most snipers of the era relied on scopes to extend their effective range and improve accuracy. Häyhä refused them, not out of stubbornness, out of calculated reasoning. A telescopic sight sits higher above the rifle barrel. To use one, a sniper must raise his head, exposing more of his profile, making detection easier. In an environment where invisibility means survival, every centimeter matters. A scope also reflects light. Even the smallest glint, sunlight catching glass at the wrong angle, can reveal position instantly. In snow, where everything is white and contrast is extreme, a single reflection is a death sentence. And in temperatures approaching -40 degrees, mechanical complexity becomes a liability. Scopes fog, lenses crack, adjustment mechanisms freeze. Iron sights, simple, fixed, reliable, do not fail. Häyhä's approach was ruthlessly practical. Keep the profile low. Eliminate reflective surfaces. Reduce mechanical failure points. Accept the limitations of shorter effective range in exchange for invisibility and reliability. It was a trade-off that most snipers would not make. But Häyhä was not most snipers. He was a hunter. And hunters know that getting close, unseen, unheard, undetected, is more valuable than shooting from distance. The White Death emerges. The early weeks of the Winter War were chaos. Soviet forces advanced in massive columns, confident in their numerical superiority. Finnish defenders fell back, fighting delaying actions, buying time. And in the frozen forests along the front lines, something else was happening. Soviet soldiers were dying. Not in firefights, not in artillery barrages. Individually, silently, a man would be standing one moment, scanning the tree line, adjusting his pack, speaking to a comrade. Then he would collapse. No warning, no sound, no visible shooter. At first it seemed random. Scattered casualties, bad luck. But as days became weeks, a pattern emerged. Certain sectors reported unusually high sniper casualties. Always single shots. Always fatal or incapacitating. Always without any indication of where the fire originated. Patrols began moving more cautiously. Soldiers scanned the forests obsessively, searching for any sign of the hidden marksman. They found nothing. Because Häyhä had perfected the art of invisibility. He wore all white, not just a coat, but layers of white cloth covering every part of his body. He moved only when necessary, and when he did, he moved slowly. So slowly that the human eye, trained to detect rapid movement, would pass right over him. He chose positions with natural concealment, behind fallen logs, beneath snow-laden branches, in shallow depressions that broke his outline. He packed snow in front of his rifle barrel so that when he fired, the muzzle blast would not kick up a telltale spray of powder. He held snow in his mouth to cool his breath, preventing visible vapor from rising and marking his position. And he waited for hours, sometimes entire days, until a target presented itself. Then one shot, always one shot, because a second shot reveals position. A second shot gives the enemy a direction to return fire. A second shot is how snipers die. Häyhä never took a second shot. He fired once, then melted back into the forest like he had never been there at all. The Soviets began calling him Belaya Smrt, the White Death, the killing ground. The Kala River sector became Häyhä's hunting ground, a stretch of frozen wilderness where Finnish forces held a defensive line against overwhelming Soviet numbers. The terrain was perfect for his methods. Dense forest, rolling hills, countless positions offering concealment and fields of fire. Soviet forces had to advance through this landscape to break the Finnish line. And every time they did, men died. Häyhä would arrive at a position before dawn, moving through darkness when detection was nearly impossible. He would construct a hide, not elaborate, just enough to break his outline and provide a stable shooting platform. Then he would wait. Soviet patrols would appear, sometimes in groups, sometimes individuals. He would select a target, usually officers or NCOs, men whose loss would cause maximum disruption. One shot, the target would drop. Confusion would erupt. Soldiers would scatter, seeking cover, trying to locate the shooter. But Häyhä would already be gone, or still there, so perfectly camouflaged that searchers would pass within meters without seeing him. The psychological impact was devastating. Soviet soldiers knew they were being hunted. They knew that at any moment, without warning, a bullet could arrive from nowhere. They knew that their enemy was invisible, patient, and almost supernaturally skilled. Fear spread through the ranks. Men became reluctant to move. Patrols slowed. Advances stalled. Because somewhere in that white wilderness, the White Death was watching. And no one knew where. The hunt begins. Soviet military command could not ignore the problem. One man was causing disproportionate casualties and eroding morale across entire units. Orders came down, find the sniper and eliminate him. Counter-sniper teams were deployed. Experienced marksmen from various units were tasked specifically with hunting Häyhä. They studied his patterns. They staked out likely positions. They waited for him to reveal himself. He never did. Because Häyhä was not just skilled, he was disciplined beyond measure. He never fell into routine. He never used the same position twice. He never took unnecessary risks. When counter-snipers appeared, he simply avoided them, finding new hunting grounds, new approaches, new methods. The Soviets escalated. Artillery was brought to bear. Entire sections of forest where Häyhä was suspected to be operating were subjected to sustained bombardment. Shells rained down for hours, pulverizing trees, cratering earth, turning the landscape into a moonscape of destruction. Then the shelling would stop. Scouts would advance cautiously. And somewhere in the devastation, a Soviet soldier would fall. Because Häyhä had not been there during the bombardment. He had moved. He had waited. And now he was hunting again. The Soviets tried different tactics. They sent soldiers forward as bait, with hidden marksmen watching for Häyhä to take the shot. He did not take the bait. They used decoys, helmets on sticks, dummy positions designed to draw fire and reveal location. He ignored them. They increased patrols, saturated areas with troops, tried to deny him space to operate. He simply shifted to new sectors. Every attempt to trap him failed. Every strategy to predict him proved useless. Because Häyhä was not following a playbook. He was improvising constantly, adapting to every change in enemy behavior, staying one step ahead through pure fieldcraft and instinct. The hunter had become the hunted, but the hunter was better at the game. The numbers. By early 1940, estimates of Häyhä's kill count were staggering. Over 500 confirmed kills. Some sources suggest the actual number was higher, possibly over 800 when unconfirmed kills were included. In roughly 100 days of active combat, that is an average of 5 kills per day. Every day, for more than 3 months, in temperatures that regularly dropped below minus 30 degrees, in conditions that made simply surviving a challenge, let alone fighting. With a rifle that had no scope, with iron sights and patience. To put this in perspective, most snipers in World War II recorded kill counts in the dozens. A highly successful sniper might reach 100 confirmed kills over years of combat. Häyhä exceeded 500 in a single winter. But the numbers, as impressive as they are, do not tell the full story. Because the impact of his actions went far beyond individual casualties. He created terror. He disrupted operations. He forced the enemy to divert resources, manpower, artillery, command attention, to deal with a single individual. He demonstrated that in the right environment, with the right skills, one man could hold off an army. Not through strength, through invisibility, through patience, through absolute mastery of his craft. March 6, 1940. Then came the day that should have ended everything. March 6, 1940. Heavy fighting in the Kala sector. Soviet forces launching another assault. Häyhä in position, engaging targets as they advanced. Then impact. An explosive bullet struck him in the face. The exact circumstances remain unclear. Some accounts say it was a counter-sniper who finally got lucky. Others suggest it was shrapnel from an artillery round. What is certain is the result. The left side of Häyhä's face was destroyed. His jaw shattered. Teeth gone. Massive trauma. Blood everywhere. He collapsed instantly, unconscious. Finnish soldiers nearby rushed to his position. They found him lying in the snow, face unrecognizable, barely breathing. No one expected him to survive. The injury alone was catastrophic. And this was 1940. Battlefield medicine was primitive by modern standards. Facial trauma of this severity, combined with blood loss, shock, and the extreme cold, was almost always fatal. They evacuated him anyway, carried him through the snow to a field hospital. Medics did what they could, stabilized him, stopped the bleeding, tried to manage the damage. But his condition remained critical. For days, he hovered between life and death. Unconscious, unresponsive. The White Death, it seemed, had finally been killed. Awakening. Then something remarkable happened. On March 13, 1940, Simo Häyhä regained consciousness. The same day, the Winter War ended. After a week in a coma, with injuries that should have been fatal, he simply woke up. His face was ruined. His jaw would require extensive reconstruction. He would carry permanent scars and disfigurement for the rest of his life. But he was alive. Against all odds, against all medical expectation, the man who had survived 100 days of combat in the most extreme conditions imaginable had survived this too. The news spread quickly. The White Death had not died. He had been wounded terribly, catastrophically, but he had survived. For the Finnish people, exhausted by months of brutal warfare, it was a symbol. If Häyhä could survive, perhaps they could too. If one man could endure so much, perhaps the nation could endure. He became more than a sniper. He became a legend. Recovery. The months that followed were agonizing. Multiple surgeries to reconstruct his jaw. Procedures to repair the damage, restore function, minimize disfigurement. Pain that would have broken most men. But Häyhä endured, just as he had endured the cold, just as he had endured the pressure of being hunted by an entire army. He approached recovery the same way he had approached sniping, with patience, discipline, and quiet determination. He did not complain. He did not seek attention. He simply healed. Slowly, painfully, completely. By the time he was discharged, the war was over. Finland had survived, battered, diminished, but independent. The Soviet Union had achieved some territorial gains, but at a cost far higher than anticipated. And Simo Häyhä, the farmer who had become the deadliest sniper in history, returned to civilian life. The quiet life. After the war, Häyhä did not capitalize on his fame. He did not write memoirs. He did not tour giving speeches. He did not seek recognition or reward. He returned to rural Finland, to farming, to hunting, to the quiet life he had known before the war. When journalists sought him out, he gave brief, modest interviews. He downplayed his achievements. He spoke of luck, of circumstance, of doing what needed to be done. He never glorified the killing. He never celebrated the deaths. He simply acknowledged that war had happened, that he had fought, and that he had survived. This humility was perhaps his most remarkable quality. A man who had achieved what no other sniper in history had achieved, who had become a legend, who had terrorized an entire army, and he wanted nothing more than to be left alone. He lived quietly for decades, hunting, farming, enjoying simple pleasures. He never fully recovered from his injuries. His face remained scarred. Speech was difficult, but he lived, and he lived well. In 2002, at the age of 96, Simo Häyhä passed away peacefully. Not on a battlefield, not from his wounds, from old age. Surrounded by the forest he had known all his life. The White Death had finally found peace. Legacy. More than 80 years have passed since the Winter War. But the legend of Simo Häyhä endures. Not because of the numbers, though they remain unmatched. Not because of the tactics, though they are still studied in military academies. But because his story represents something fundamental about warfare, about survival, about what one individual can achieve against impossible odds. He demonstrated that technology is not everything. That numbers do not guarantee victory. That environment, properly understood and utilized, can be the greatest weapon of all. He showed that patience can defeat aggression. That stillness can overcome movement. That discipline can triumph over chaos. And he proved that an ordinary man, a farmer, a hunter, someone with no special training or advantages, can become extraordinary when circumstances demand it. His methods have been analyzed endlessly. Military historians study his tactics. Snipers train using principles he demonstrated. Survivalists examine how he endured extreme conditions. But the core of his success cannot be taught. It was not technique. It was character. The ability to remain motionless for hours in minus 40-degree cold. The discipline to fire once and only once, even when multiple targets presented themselves. The patience to wait days for the perfect shot, rather than take a good shot immediately. The humility to return to normal life after achieving legendary status. These are not skills. They are qualities. And they made Simo Häyhä something more than a sniper. They made him a force of nature. The frozen forest. Imagine one last time that frozen forest. The temperature minus 40 degrees. Snow stretching endlessly in every direction. Silence so complete you can hear your own heartbeat. Somewhere in that white wilderness, a man lies perfectly still. He has been there for hours. He will remain for hours more if necessary. He is not cold, he has become cold. He is not hidden, he has become invisible. He is not waiting, he has become patience itself. And when the moment arrives, when everything aligns, when the target appears and the conditions are perfect, he will fire once. One shot, one kill. Then he will vanish back into the snow as if he were never there at all. This is the story of the White Death. The farmer who became a legend. The hunter who terrorized an army. The man who proved that in the frozen silence of winter, with nothing but skill, discipline, and iron will, one individual can change the course of history. The forest is silent now. The war is long over. The snow has melted and returned 1,000 times. But the legend remains, frozen in time, perfect, eternal, waiting in the white silence, forever